The difference between having a great quarter, making your number, or reporting a bad quarter often comes down to the effectiveness of your sales team's discovery calls and demos. But how do you make sure your reps are doing the right things on their calls in order to finish the quarter strong? Well, introducing Gong.io, the number one conversation intelligence platform for B2B sales teams. Gong helps you ensure your reps are doing deep discovery calls and crisp sales demos by recording, transcribing, and analyzing their calls. And Gong allows you to understand how well your playbook is being followed and analyze how well it's working so you can constantly move the needle on your win rates. Now, if you request a demo of Gong as a result of hearing this message, you'll get a free ebook copy of my award-winning book, Zero Time Selling, 10 Essential Steps to Accelerate Every Company's Sales. So go to gong.io/accelerate to request your no-obligation demo and get your copy of my award-winning book, Zero Time Selling. Again, that's gong.io/accelerate, gong.io/accelerate. So go there now and come back and enjoy today's episode. This episode of Accelerate is brought to you in part by Discover.org. Looking to close 4 times as many deals in half the time? Discover.org's industry-leading, human-verified sales intelligence gives you all of the data and insights like direct dials, org charts, planned projects, verified emails, and executive moves you need to stop wasting time on research and spend more time talking to the right decision-maker with the right message at the right time. Their team of 250-plus sales researchers do all the work so that you don't have to. 2,500 companies are already using Discover.org to win more deals. So check them out at www.discoverorg.com. That's www.discoverorg.com. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 528 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record, where I hold in-depth conversations with today's leading experts in sales, marketing, and leadership 6 days a week. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. So joining me on the show for the first time is Jacco vanderKooij. Jacco is the founder and CEO of Winning by Design. And Winning by Design helps customers to design, build, and scale their sales efforts. And he's author of an excellent book titled Blueprints for a SaaS Sales Organization, How to Design, Build, and Scale a Customer-Centric Sales Organization. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into how Jacco believes the current sales model that we find, especially sort of in tech space, is not working as well as it used to be. It's maybe even broken. And he's going to dive into what we need to do to fix it to make sure that companies can thrive in an increasingly competitive environment. If you'd like to see the show notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/528. There we provide a time-stamped breakdown of this and all episodes and conversations on Accelerate. Now, in case you missed it at the beginning of the show, this episode is brought to you by 2 sponsors. First, I'm pleased to welcome a new partner to Accelerate, Discover.org. Discover.org's industry-leading human-verified sales intelligence gives you all the data and insights you need to stop wasting time on research and spending more time talking to the right decision-maker with the right message at the right time. Make sure you visit them at discoverorg.com. Also, today's episode is brought to you in part by Gong.io. Gong is a great coaching tool to help managers boost rep productivity by quickly analyzing your sales team's calls and demos. Check it out at gong.io/accelerate. And if you do that today, you get a free PDF copy of my award-winning book, Zero Time Selling. So let's jump right into it. Jacco vanderKooij, welcome to Accelerate.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you on the show. So a question I start all the interviews with is, in your mind, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
Well, for me, what I see at the current given point in time is that the biggest challenge is that they are unable to execute a proper sales process. They are unable to execute any given step and create the same result over and over again. Primarily for most sales professionals, it's still artistry.
No, okay, so 2 questions that come out of that. One is they're unable to execute it consistently because of why?
So that's question 1. And what's question 2?
Well, the question would be about artistry. I couldn't tell whether you were saying that was good or bad.
It depends, and so I'll explain it a little bit. First,
sure.
I saw in one of your previous episodes there was the 20-80 rule discussed, and Andy, perhaps you can indulge. What does the 20-80 rule stand for?
Well, in the case of this particular guest, you were saying that 80% of your performance, your revenue, whatever, is going to come from 20% of the activities that you do.
Great. And that 20/80 rule has generally prevailed in B2B sales for the past decade. 20% of your top performers generate 80% of the revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a common practice. However, what we see in SaaS is that due to the lowering of the average contract value, to no longer are we closing millions of dollars of deals, but we are now closing thousands of dollars of deals.
Right.
SaaS by itself has become immune to rainmakers. That means if 20% of the people generate 80% of the revenue, what does the remaining 80% generate, Andy?
Yeah, 20%, right?
20%, right? Exactly. So now, what we see today is that 80%, because we are SaaS, because we are Rainmaker immune, that remaining 80%, in order for an sales organization to perform, now need to produce 80%. So instead of generating 20%, they now need to generate 80%. And that's the reason why many of the sales organizations starts to fail.
Got it.
Now, as this comes back to process, how do you make average performers over and over repeat within an admirable result that can be repeated again and again? As you know from your athletic background, as we know how the military does this, how hospital industry does this, you have to implement the process. And so that is where the weakness sits in many of today's sales organizations. Okay.
But one of the things that we see in the SaaS business, and also, we're going to talk about this as one of the topics I want to get into with you, is that the process, there's no shortage of process, certainly in SaaS business. There's certainly no shortage of process. So it's the wrong process with the wrong intention.
Both are, I wouldn't agree with the first one, saying there's a shortage of process, like there's no shortage of process. I think there is.
Okay.
I think that what we see today is if you look at a traditional SaaS sales organization, it's a bunch of people that are working hard, making phone calls, following scripts. That is not necessarily a process.
Right.
A process is doing something that is proven to work and do more of it and stop doing what doesn't work, right? That is the whole idea behind the process. If you see today, if I bring up for most salespeople, most sales professionals, I simply open up the calendar and look out what 2 weeks from now is on the calendar, it is pretty much empty. That tells me that there's no process installed. Like if I look at an athlete's calendar 2 weeks from now, I can tell you what I will be doing on Tuesday morning between 8 and 10 p.m., 8 and 10 a.m. That is simply what an indication of process is. Now, that tells you that they are doing something, and I do not know whether we want to call that a process. I don't think executing email scripts to the tune of in a certain volume is essentially a process. But yeah, my point is we need to execute a process of things that are proven to work and stop doing what doesn't work.
Okay, I agree 100% on that. So let's talk about this presentation. You sent me a link to a Prezi that you created, a presentation, and a great title for what I think was sort of what I'd call a manifesto or an indictment or a call to action, or all three, about current SaaS sales. And the great title called the Art of Making Love. So how did you come up with that title for this presentation you put together?
Well, like it comes from personal experience. I myself, obviously, at one point in time was a contributor, and later on in life was a VP of sales. When the customers that I personally won, or those that my team won, and created deals with, they never came to me and said like, "My gosh, your team was excellent negotiators," or "Your team was great at closing me at the last week," or something like that. They never really bought because we were executing a specific skill set really well. It's not like right? The reason why they essentially choose, and like if I think of companies like Dish who bought like $50 million worth of equipment over the years from me, is because they trusted me. Now, I call that, like they loved me, and love in a professional relationship. They would call me up, the executives of that company would call me up and ask me all kind of questions on the weekend whenever they wanted. They trusted me, and in my, like in today, I would say that's a form of business love, so to speak. Now, If you ask any salesperson, any salesperson, one point in their life, they figured out that they came across a customer who loved them. If you're in sales for more than 5 years and you have not run into a customer who's willing on LinkedIn to tell you the best salesperson ever, then you've not been in sales long enough. You will always, sooner or later, run into a customer that think of you as the greatest salesperson ever.
Yep.
And so the question is not, can you do it once? The question is, can you do it again and again and again? And hence the title, The Art of Making Love, doing it again over and over again.
Okay. Now, you just had an event that you'd hosted called Flying Upside Down. How'd that go?
It's an event that I presented at, and at that event, we're bringing together, thinkers, doers, thinkers, and where we present to them a variety of ideas that are out of the norm. So, we had somebody who was a former fighter pilot. We had a Stanford future, probably Hall of Famer on mathematics, and there was a whole group of different people presenting from all kinds of different angles. And I think that's what we're looking at today. Today, people looking for information, not just from the same sources, but from a right variety of sources so that they can put the pieces together themselves.
And did you present this presentation, The Art of Making Love, at that event?
That's right. So I presented The Art of Making Love.
And what was the reaction to it?
Well, I open up this asking, who of you is a founder, who of you is this, and then I asked who of you is great at making love. That, of course, got a chuckle out of the audience. A few raised their hands, and I'm proud of that, people that they're willing to claim. What you'll see is that I'll leave that up to the audience to decide overall. Considering the line that was waiting at the end of the presentation, I think it went very well. People, I want you to know, this is an emotional experience for a lot of people. This is not like a rational. When we look at sales in a new and more modern light, it's an emotional experience, because essentially, I am telling you, it's no longer about the close. It's no longer about selling. It is about helping your customer to buy the right solution.
Well, right. And sort of more fundamentally, what you're saying in this presentation, I'll share the link with it with the audience, is that, hey, this, what we consider the sort of great leading edge sales model, SaaS sales model, which is benefiting from this infusion of all this technology and so on, is you're basically saying, look, it's failing. The fundamental model is failing, and it's not sustainable in its current form.
That is exactly right. So I'm going to make a big statement, and that is I'll let it sit there for a second, okay? Sales, I want you to see it as a technology. Think of sales as a technology, and then think of that technology having hardly have any innovation over the past decade from a SaaS perspective, right? Over the past decade, we're still looking at that same model of an inside sales model based on the same kind of people and profiles.
Predictable revenue model. Fine for its time, but the innovation has been lacking since. And so what we notice, and as we represent a couple of hundred sales organizations in SaaS that we have worked with, we notice that persistently fails per today, and we can actually predictably fail it. Again, that's not a jab at the methodology that was deployed at that point in time. It is just outdated, because no longer are people responsive to emails, and no longer are people responsive to the single value proposition of a CapEx versus OpEx model, which is the premise of why that inside sales model works. Sure.
So today, right? And so that is the shortfall. So now we need an innovation, and there's nothing out there. Everybody, is simply relying on tools to do the old methodology, to use the old innovation more effectively. And to the point is, I think that more tools are not having brought us the benefit that we had hoped for till date.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to get into that because I have long sought somebody to be able to show it to me and say, okay, yeah, here's the correlation we have between this infusion of this technology and these tools and increased levels of performance and productivity on the part of sales. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't exist.
That's correct. I think, and what you're experiencing is, I can give you all the tools you want, but if you're not executing the right process, then you're doing it, then the tools are not going to impact, or even worse, it can make the wrong impact, right? And
sure. So you talk about in your presentation, I'll just call it the presentation. I keep on calling it Prezi, but is that you describe a zone where inside sales goes to die. So explain what you meant by that.
So when you start looking at the math behind SaaS, there is a function, or there's a curvature that tells below that curvature a two-touch sales organization doesn't work. And to give you a simple point of view, a two-touch sales organization means that the SDR sets up a meeting, the meeting then gets closed by an AE. Mm-hmm. The customer gets touched 2 times in this case. What we see in that is that if you're selling a $5 service, for example, a Chrome plugin, that would not make any sense. Something like at that low price, we're probably best off buying it online. So at some point in time, it starts to make sense that you can use a two-touch sales organization to generate revenue. That point previously was in the range of $8,000 to $10,000, but as these SDRs found it harder and harder to generate SQLs, simply because email no longer is a scalable tool in order to generate leads in the B2B market, what we started to see that in the beginning, SDRs generated like 20, 22, 25 SQLs per month, or 1 per day. But today we see that SDRs, these inside sales organizations, are falling in the production of setting up meetings to sometimes like 5 or 10 per month. With that, the client acquisition costs start to double almost when you start to calculate it out, as well as that AEs, the salespeople, no longer convert 1 in 3 in their pipeline. They started to convert 1 in 5. These metrics have created the triangle of death that says if you're in this price zone, let's say $10,000 per annual contract, and your SDRs only generate 5 SQLs per month, then you find yourself in the triangle of death where sales organizations go to die. Now, if you're selling a $250,000 annual contract value, and then your SDR generates 5 SQLs, obviously, then you're in the safe zone. You're on the other side of that. And so when you draw that out, then we see that where that line is today. And Andy, let me be straight up. That line is moving, and it's moving to higher ACVs in order for you still to be able to afford the current double touch sales organization.
Right. And you said that the decline is accelerating, and that the common fixes aren't going to work. So we have to innovate somehow.
That is right. So
the common answer oftentimes seems to be for most SaaS organizations is, just do more activity. Do
more email and so on. Now, we had high hopes for social selling. And although I'm, myself have benefited from social selling, and myself, I've worked with it. I have to tell you, social selling, although great it is really hard. It is just very complicated for a salesperson that is, in the start of his career, 25 to 30 years old, to do it really well. You may be able to do it once in a while, but to create repetitive success to the tune that it generates and fills in the void, and that void that has been created by the lack of response to email and the lack of interest in having a meeting, that is just challenging for a large part of the population. Like in process, we cannot just depend on the superstars who do it. The superstars are superstars, and they are great at social selling. But what do I do with the remaining 80%?
Right.
And for them, social selling has just been very tough not to crack.
All right. So the idea you're suggesting for the innovation is to move from sort of the traditional stage-based land and expand two-touch sales model from being sales-centric to being customer-centric. And this idea of being customer-centric isn't really new, but you sort of sketch it out a little bit differently. So tell us your approach to being customer-centric.
So, first and foremost, we've worked closely with customer success organizations in the past. And what we see is that the primary interest of customer success from its origin, it's changing today, fortunately, but from its origin was to make the customer happy. And, as I sold, myself, my CEO would tell me, Jacco, don't mistake installing for selling. And what he was telling me is focus on selling. You just focus on the sales and let somebody else focus on the team, focus on making the customer happy. And so as a result, customer success organizations just did that. Just make your customer happy. what we see in SaaS and in future advances of SaaS, because we got to be realistic, SaaS is only a temporary model as we know it today. Right. It will evolve, and it will evolve over the next 2 to 3 years. And so, but what we see per today is that the revenue primarily is made to the far right when the customer is happy and successful. That is when the revenue is made. That's where the profit is made. Now, in my visual, I say, okay, but my customer success organization is trying to make love to the customer there. They're trying to make the customer happy. So that's where they're creating hearts. The customer is trying to make revenue, and we are trying to make love to them, right? We're trying to make them happy. The opposite also happens during the close. During the close, we're trying to make revenue, which we're not going to get because the contracts are not structured in SaaS that way. And the customer is just trying to be happy with us, they're trying to trust us. And so I believe that those two things need to be flopped. And my first gut reaction on that is that means that sales organizations, of course, they need to have an interest in securing financial interest such as a contract.
Right.
But mind you, I'm trying to win the game, not scoring a goal. Scoring a goal is part of winning the game. And similarly, you're making a customer happy, and winning a contract is that. Now, the key piece here, absolute key piece, is that we're doing this today. But we're doing this with a mindset that is very outdated. We still call pitching. We still call it closing. We still write down on the contract, did you close a contract? There's no closing. There's no closing in SaaS. There's committing. It's a mutual commitment to the future. So it's a commitment. There's no close. There's no negotiation. I mean, I just, I see it's now hip right now to teach our sales teams to negotiate as if taught by a hostage negotiator. Like, seriously?
I know.
Like, there is no negotiation in SaaS. There shouldn't be any discount. Discount never was intended to be in SaaS. Anyway, so.
Well, also the thing is, customers don't make up their minds in front of the salesperson.
They shouldn't. No,
this whole idea of the closer, I call it the myth of the closer, because the fact is that it's a very rare event where someone actually closes. You've got multiple stakeholders that get together, they make a decision.
Absolutely right. And so on that, we say, I'll give you a simple example. We say, why don't we change the way we call it? Now, I've been called out in public a number of occasions saying, Lily, is the way we're naming it really that important? Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. Words matter.
Sure. Words do matter.
Yes.
Matter, right? And so I'll give you a practical example. For those of you who enjoy account-based marketing, it is called spear phishing. Great. Who is the fisherman? That's the account-based marketing operator, right? Okay. And so what is the process of fishing? Oh, we're going to use a technique. We're going to target a specific fish. Who's the fish? Oh, that's the customer. What happens to the customer? Sushi. That is what happens to the customer, right? So I go look, what we call it matters. It matters absolutely. And so I believe that we should stop calling it negotiation. We should stop handing out books about how to negotiate as if you're a hostage negotiator. We should call it what it is. You're trading. And trading as in, hey, I give you something in return. Trading does not devalue your product. Trading, you exchange value of product. Trading means that you got to have a list of trading items ready. Which items are you gonna trade with the customer, right? Trading is way more customer centric. What you call it does matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, I talk about this in my most recent book, Amp Up Your Sales, is that at the heart of sales, there's a trade that happens, and the trade is. This is an explicit bargain. The customer says, I'm going to give you some of my time. What are you going to give me in return?
That is exactly right.
And if there's no ROI for the customer, you stop getting their time.
That is exactly right. And so we believe, this is the core, as we start thinking about sales as an innovation, thinking about, how, what is the innovation we need? I think that what we see that SaaS arguably is leading the world in innovation in sales. And that what you'll see in the model is built towards customer success. And in that, we need to learn and we need to flip those two activities. We need to stop thinking about closing a customer in sales and then making them happy in customer success. We need to start thinking about maybe we should make them happy in sales and we should start closing more business in the customer success function. If you flip those two, then we need a process for that in order to implement that. And in that process, we need to make sure that we name it the right things so that we're not, degrading customers with the way how we treat them in the words that we use to reflect the activities that we induce on them.
Right. I mean, as you talk about in the presentation, I talk about in what I write, it's about serving the customer. And sales is basically about service. I mean, I have a quote I took from Jeff Bezos' interview he did in the Harvard Business Review where he said, "We don't make money when we sell things. We make money when we help customers make purchase decisions." And it's that change in orientation, that change in perspective is hugely significant.
I believe it is, and I believe that like SaaS is leading that, and that has me obviously excited for to be part in sales right now. I think we are entering like a new realm of sales. We see a new generation. We see new tools that are going to absolutely play an important role in this. But what we are missing in that is the methodology that lies underneath it, which I believe will quickly become customer centric, and a process that helps us execute all those activities that we know so well: how to make a call, how to place a call, how to write an email, how to have a meeting. These are all activities. They need to be structured in a proper process and executed accordingly.
Right. I mean, you talk about going from a land and expand to an educate and assist approach to selling, and one of the problems I have with so many of the processes I see within SaaS and many of the tools is that, to me, I think customers have and my experience has shown this over decades, is that, customers have sort of one objective, which is, when they're in their buying mode, is they want help to quickly gather the information they need to make good decisions with the least investment of their time and resources possible. I mean, they don't want to spend forever making decisions. They don't want to involve more people than they need to involve, as they want to make good decisions quickly. It becomes a strategic advantage for them. But it doesn't seem like any of our processes, if I ask them, it's, introducing a new tool, a CEO, founder of introducing this new tool, I say, okay, well, how does it help the customer achieve what they're trying to achieve?
That's right. Now, the hop that I'm going to try to make, the gap that I'm going to try to make you jump here is the following. Traditionally, we think of stages. Right? Traditionally, we have lead stages and we have sales stages, we have deployment stages. Traditionally, we have always thought in stages, and the stages were there because this happened before the internet was there. Mm-hmm. I would move you from the stage qualified to negotiation when I gave you something. Since the customer didn't have access into all the information, I traded with you. So, for example, if you wanted pricing, I wanted budget. If you wanted to know features that we delivered, I wanted to know requirements. And through that exchange, trading along those steps, I would maneuver you from stage to stage because your questions developed. You wanted more information. You couldn't get it anywhere else. You only could get it from the salesperson that knocked on your door in B2B. Right. So I knew exactly in what stage you were. Today, customers obviously can get pricing, can get all the information they want online. So the idea of stages is gone. It's not like some customer calls you up in the morning and saying like, "Hey, Jacco, thanks for the email you sent me. Can you please move me from qualified into negotiation because I'm ready for it?" Right? They don't do that. And so we now have to think that customers go through experiences. They go through a series of experiences, and sometimes that series of experiences that they go through is like in 5 minutes, and sometimes it takes 6 months. I mean, it all depends on right. And so we may not be able to put their stages on there, but we may very well know when we communicate with them what experience they are, and we call that oh shit, I have a problem experience. Oh, aha, there's a solution experience. Right? These are real experiences a customer finds themselves in the middle of. And once you know what experience that they're in, you know how to, as a sales professional or as a customer-focused professional, you know how to address that experience.
Well, yeah, rather than experiences, I was sort of thinking about it's emotional stages customers go through, right? Because the way you defined it is, the first one was like your cartoon. It's almost like watching the old Batman cartoon. Is arg, I have a problem, or aha, there's solutions. This is what they're feeling at that time.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so, we train our sales organizations that we work with. We train on recognizing that because you can't sell to somebody who's in education mode about learning about the problem. You can't say, "Oh, let me tell you how great our product is." Right? It's just not the right thing to do. And so it's one of those key skill sets. And to give you how important this is, what are the two things that salespeople are trained on when they come into an organization? Is primarily, hey, let me show you how our product works, right? So I'm teaching you about the product. And the second thing is, and here's the pitch, right? So when a new salesperson is pushed into a corner by a client, or the client is asking tough questions, what are you gonna fall back on? You're gonna fall back on what you've been trained on. And what is the training? Let me give you the pitch about the features that we have.
Right.
And so, this is a typical thing that we see everywhere: pitch training, pitching contests. It's not that it has a negative impact by itself. It has a negative impact if it's the only thing you train.
Well, but it gets back to the mindset, though, that we talked about before, and words matter, right? Because instead of, you think about, pitch, qualify, present, negotiate, you said all these very sales-centric terms. When you're thinking about what you're doing as a salesperson, if that's what you think you're doing, that word is in your mind, that's the way you're going to be received or perceived by the customer. As opposed to having a conversation, we're going to diagnose what the issue is, we're going to educate them, we're going to assist them, we're going to help them, right? We're going to help them. To me, that's not just semantics. That dictates behaviors and mindset.
Absolutely. Think of you giving your customer and saying, hey, you should get a second opinion from this particular provider, right? How many sales organizations would still struggle with that today? To tell the customer, go get a second opinion at this particular provider.
Exactly. It's a great example. I mean, I've written, and I speak about this, is I say, what's the one question a customer will never ask you? And it always sort of stumps the audience. And I said, here's an example. So, a customer is never going to call you up. Let's say you're a sales manager. Customer is never going to call you and say, Andy, we think we really like your product, but your salesperson here, John, he's just not salesy enough. Could you send over somebody who's more salesy?
That's exactly right. Now,
that's never going to happen. You're never going to hear that question.
You're never going to hear that question. That's exactly right. And it depicts and if I try to put these things together again, it depicts what we said earlier on. You said, there's enough processes. Maybe there's enough processes on how to pitch, but there's not enough processes on how to properly diagnose a customer.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the wrong process. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Right. And I think that is, when we see today, we believe in that salespeople need to be taught in a trade. That trade is sales, and that trade is primarily customer-centric focused. Learn how to ask the right questions. Learn how to ask different kind of questions, and not only open and close, but the other question-based sales techniques are absolutely applicable. Learn how to diagnose the customer without leading with a question, right? Because that is another big no-no right nowadays. Learn how to truly understand, and from that, try to help the customer succeed. And that is where the stages that I go, instead of land and expand, which is very centric. And I want to give one more example at the end of this.
Sure.
Land and expand. It is educate and assist. Educate the customer on the problem they're experiencing and the solutions that are at hand, and then assist them to achieve their success.
Yeah, sort of interesting. You have a new acronym you created called Talker, and I was sort of smiling as I was reading it because it was sort of similar to a newer one that I'd come up recently as well. But why don't you talk about Talker? Because I think it's a great sort of 6 easy things to keep in mind.
Yeah, so Talker is the first training we give to any salesperson. It doesn't matter whether you're like a $500,000 enterprise rep or whether you are a brand new first time salesperson. Okay, T stands primarily for tone of voice. Now, tone of voice means my ability to control my tone, listen to you carefully, and then respond and mirror that tone. That does not only have to happen verbally, that can happen with an emoticon, that can happen in a written word, right? A stands for asking questions. And asking questions, you need to learn and understand how do you open and close, but also situational, pain questions, and so on. You need to learn and understand how you can group questions together to help a customer to diagnose a customer. L stands for listen. And actively listening. And listening means that you're able to use some of the pain words, emotional pain words that I use, and word them back to me, right? So listen carefully to what I say and then mirror that as you respond back to me and say, so Mr. Customer, if I got it right, you said X, Y, and Z, right? Mm-hmm. In order to do that, the K stands for keeping notes. As I said earlier, notes is super important. E stands for the ability to elaborate on a conversation, to engage, to go deeper. Right? If, don't let the first answer that the customer gives offset you, that is the right answer. Dig in. And then R stands for repeat what you've heard. 99% of all, I think I've written it somewhere that 99% of all issues come because of communication issues. And, to give it a real example, we use Talker when you have a meeting, when you diagnose, all the way when you negotiate. Can you please repeat what did the customer counter offer was before you say yes or no. Can you please just repeat it, right? and then see and ask the customer, did I get that right? That is, repeating is a very this spells the acronym talker, which of course is a little stab at a jab at the process. Like it involves heavily listening and so on. But talker is the process.
Yeah. I noticed a little irony in the term, but yeah, it's very good. I like that.
One more thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it.
And this is the topic about qualification, and the process of qualification is like a hot button that shows what is wrong with the process. Most techniques today are using a methodology which is still from a series of what we call BANT or MEDDIC or something like that, and it's a process in which the salesperson verifies if a customer is qualified. This is the problem with that. I like similar to you when I teach groups, I ask them to qualify me, and I'm a gullible customer, and I give them exactly, okay, I have a budget, I'm the decision maker, I absolutely must have this by June 1st, because if I'm not, my platform won't launch or something like that. And then I show the following: who got the value out of this qualification process? Who got all the value? The salesperson. And what did the customer get out of it? When you were qualifying me, what did I get out of this as a customer? Nothing. And that is wrong with this process. And that is what we got to realize. That tells us we are up for new innovation. What we see is today, BANT only applies to one moment in time, very very much present in the sales process, in that early stage of qualification. We even have a separate stage for that, right? Oh, I qualified you, you're in. Like, no, qualification is not a stage that happens. It's not like it happens every time.
It's not a one-time event. Yes,
it's not a one-time event. Yeah, and on top of that, we're using the wrong thing, right? And so that's my point on that. Is like we really need some innovation on sales.
Absolutely. I mean, I've written about this. And what I sort of relate to it is the Heisenberg's principle of uncertainty and the observer effect. The act of selling to someone changes them. The act of selling to a buyer, if you're doing it well, changes their needs and requirements and their perception of what they can achieve. So you have to continually requalify them, at every phase of and every contact you have with them.
That is absolutely right. And I think that what we wish for organizations to do that, Andy, all I ask for sales professionals, and we have even a quote on this, is to treat this as a trade. We believe that when organizations start treating the way how they sell as important as, and make that as important as what they sell, that then truly, sales can be that unique selling point you're looking for. And today we spend millions of dollars on developing product. We spend, gazillions of dollars on marketing of the product. And then we just hire a bunch of salespeople and say like, hey, here's the script, here's the product, go sell. That is just not like as I pointed out in the Prezi, we know what the outcome of that looks like. Dozens and dozens of salespeople in an organization failing, unpredictable revenue, like drama, people relocating their sales teams, to other parts of the country so they can get it cheaper, bringing in more tools. All these things are really failing to solve the real problem, which is get the proper methodology, then implement the right process, and then train your people to do it in a customer-centric way. Right.
Yeah, it's fundamentally it comes down to behaviors and habits. And as you said, you sort of outline them with your talker acronym. That's I've got an acronym, but if they can master those within the right process, then the odds of success go up fairly substantially.
I think so, and I think that what we see right now is this is at the point in time that this is changing. And although we're in the midst of it, we may feel that it's going still too slow. Considering how long traditional sales was on the scene for, let's say 50 years, then the more inside sales came on the scene for 5 to 10 years, and we're right now ready for new innovation that's coming into sales. You and I are part of it. Your listeners are part of it. This is that moment that we're all having a voice. We're all listening, and contributing to this. And I believe that is going to make sales in effect a better thing, because we have a advantage. The disadvantage is that we do not have an educational system. It's also an advantage, because if the educational system was in place, it would take years and years to unroot bad habits. We have no educational system in place. There's no degree that you can get in sales. And that is actually will makes us more nimble and quicker to maneuver in the future.
Oh, I agree. One point I'll make, because I think the idea about how you sell being as important as what you sell, to me, that has continuity that goes back decades. Because, I look at my own experiences selling for startups, selling large, sort of like you were with Dish, large mission critical communications applications worth tens of millions of dollars. And we were startups competing against the really big guys. How do we win? It was based on how we sold, right? We didn't have track record. We didn't have the installed base, but why were we winning these large orders? Based on how we sold. And so I think this has always been critical, but I think to your point, it's becoming more and more critical these days. And so, people listening to this interview, listen to what Jacco was saying, is you got to take this to heart, because how you sell is going to be what sets you apart from your competitors.
Can I hug you right now? Is this the pride time where we're hugging?
No, we're doing it virtually, but yeah. Well, Jacco, it's been fantastic talking with you. Really appreciate taking the time to join us today. So tell people how they can find out more about what you do and connect with you.
Oh, obviously you can always look me up on LinkedIn. I know my name is hard to look up, so probably the best way to go is to our website, www.winningbydesign.com. It's winningbydesign.com. We have a worldwide organization. We help customers, from our Sydney office, from our Amsterdam office, and from Silicon Valley office. And so we're just happy to help our customers succeed.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks for joining us. And friends, thank you for spending this time with me today. Make sure you come back again tomorrow for another great episode of Accelerate. Until then, appreciate if you get a chance, go to iTunes, wherever you listen to Accelerate. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave us a review. We really want to hear what we can do to make this a more valuable experience for you. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.